It's amazing that on this road trip, where they split 4 games with the Padres, and now they've split the first 2 with the Diamondbacks, they've had 2 kick-in-the-teeth losses. Now, they rebounded from the other one, right?
Yeah.
They came back and they won the first game of the Diamondback series. And so I'm not concerned about it having a lasting effect. It'd be nice if they win today. But let's do math. There's 29 games left. The Braves won yesterday. The Mets are 4 games out. In order for the Mets to have any kind of chance toward the end of September, they have to be the same amount of games out as they have left with the Braves. And that would be 3. They're at 4 right now. So if the Mets go, if the Braves go 500 the rest of the way, and believe me, winning in the DNA is a significant real thing. I know it's not quantifiable, but people that know how to win, they just know how to win. So there's been no team in Major League Baseball that has been ravaged more by injury than the Atlanta Braves. They should not even be in a playoff position. I'm amazed they are. And all they do is they go sweep the Minnesota Twins, who are in the middle of their own pennant race. So if the Braves go 500 the rest of the way, Don, the Mets have to go 19-10.
Right.
I don't see it happening. I've said it for a month. People got mad at me. This is no knock on the Mets. They're not better than the 3 teams in front of them. They're not going to catch them.
You wouldn't think so, but I don't want to throw dirt on them just yet because they kind of draw you back in. Even last night's an example of that. You can look at how they lost the game, and Diaz gives up the grand slam home run in the 8th inning, and we can dissect whether it was the right move to bring Diaz in that situation in a moment. But they came back from 4-0 down and tied the game. Like that, Severino didn't have it. They're down 4-0, and you're locking yourself in, all right, this team's going to get blown out. That's a loss. And they kind of suck you in by not dying and taking the lead. And then just to have it pulled out from under you. So this team doesn't seem to want to go away. Get a win this afternoon. Braves are taking on Philly. So you got a chance to get it back to 3. And then they'll continue with their series against Philadelphia over the weekend, Atlanta. And then the Mets take on the worst team in the history of baseball, the Chicago White Sox. So can they possibly pick up 2-3 games over the next few days? It's not impossible. So you're looking at the wide-angle lens of 19-10 versus 500, which makes it seem like it's impossible. But if the Mets take care of business today and against the White Sox, who they should sweep, is it that crazy to think that we can reconvene on Tuesday after Labor Day, Michael, and this team only being a couple of games out?
It's not impossible, but remember, the Yankees didn't sweep the White Sox either. They took 2 out of 3. So this is one where you have to pound them into the ground and take all 3. And today's a very big game.
Listen, the Yankees needed it because they had to win the division. The Mets need it because they need to get in the playoffs. So there should be a lot more desperation. White Sox lost 2 games yesterday. They're 31-103, Michael. So you don't have a kick coming. I'm sorry. Losses like last night, losses like Sunday, puts the onus on you not taking a day off against really bad baseball teams. So you can't have what's happened against the Marlins recently. You can't have what happened against the Rockies. We had a chance to sweep those series and didn't. Get to work here. Get a nice 4-game winning streak after that tough loss. Maybe the Braves drop a couple. You get it down to 2. And later on this season in September, the Mets have 3 games in Atlanta against the Braves. So where they can kind of control their own destiny in those 3 games. So if they can keep it within 2, take care of business against the Braves later on in September, that seems to be more doable than the realistic numbers that you gave, 19-10 versus 500. That makes it seem like it's impossible. But in the immediate, there are games to gain based on who the Braves have to play and who the Mets have to play.
And one thing that the Mets have to be concerned about, as do most major league teams, because Yankee fans right now are nodding about Clay Holmes. Edwin Diaz is not close to the pitcher he was during the Timmy Trumpet summer. Not even close.
No, that's over.
Not even close. I mean, we've talked about how much they're paying Lindor. Lindor is going to end up to be worth that money. That is a sunk cost on Mr. Edwin Diaz because he's not the same pitcher. I don't think it has anything to do with the knee at the WBC, anything like that. He's not the same pitcher.
Oh. This is what closers normally do, right? They're on top of their game one year. lost the next year. Then they kind of gain it back, but he's not automatic. The two gut-wrenching losses the Mets had were home runs given up by Diaz. So that's got to be something you're thinking about every time you bring him in.
When he doesn't throw strikes, you knew when he walked those two guys, he's in trouble because then he has no command of the fastball, has to come in with the slider. You can't hang a fastball. You can hang a slider, and that's what he did, and then he got crushed by Corbin Carroll. So that's an awful, awful loss, just as the one against the Padres. Because think about it. You take both of those games, we have a completely different open today.
Now, let's get into it. Was that too much desperation by Mendoza bringing Diaz in the eighth?
I don't even know. It wasn't desperation, though, because, Don, think about it. I know they were short in their bullpen. They couldn't use Nunez yesterday because he has some soreness.
And that's a problem.
That's a problem. But
I don't think he's coming back anytime soon.
But Maton has been great for them. So he had one guy on and 2 outs. Let him get the final out. Because we always talk about, why don't they leave that guy in for a second inning? Well, sometimes guys are creatures of habit. So they also don't, a lot of closers don't like to come in with people on base. He comes in with somebody on base, he walks 2, and he gives up the home run. They could have squeezed another out of Maton.
Absolutely.
Doesn't the Diaz thing also beg the conversation of never knowing what someone's going to come back exactly like after a major injury?
Well, I mean, they made their bed by signing him to that contract. They got seduced by the Timmy Trumpet stuff, and he was great that year. The 1 year he had to be great, he was great. And Don, you know this too. Before the year he was great, he was always a disappointment. We were always saying that trade with Seattle was a terrible trade, where they had to take Cano's contract, the whole deal. He was never great except that 1 year that he had to be great.
But if you remember, the way we spun that deal with Seattle was don't look at it as the Cano deal, look at it as the Diaz deal. And then in 22, he's lights out, and good for him. You know, that was a bet on myself year, and he came up big, and he parlayed into a big contract, and then the World Baseball Classic comes, and he gets hurt. But, you know, Peter's right. You don't know what closers are going to be, or any reliever for that matter, year to year. But then coming off an injury like that, and it seemed like he kind of found it after starting off slow. But now I don't know what it is, Michael. Is it coming off the injury? Is it just one of those years? Is it the fact that he hasn't had a lot of save situations? He went through a period where it seemed like he was just coming in tie games, coming in because there wasn't a save situation. When he blew it against San Diego, that wasn't a save situation. That was a tie game. Yep. And if you remember, Michael, because it was a tie game on the road, they didn't have to go to him. They could have saved him for the save situation, but they brought him in there. He gives up the home run. You know, last night, you're still thinking outside the box, bringing him in the eighth when you could have let Maton get. Now, it wasn't even a jam. You just, get through that inning. Comes in the ninth inning in a clean inning like they like with those relievers. So it's tough, and now you're 4 back with 29 to play, and it's going to be a uphill battle. Today becomes just an immensely big game because they just can't afford to give too many up.
Now, the one thing that scares me is, has Diaz ever been great other than 22? Because we were mocking that trade. We were mocking it. You gave up Jarrett Kelenic for Robinson Cano. You take Robinson Cano's contract. Now, that didn't turn out to hurt the Mets because he got suspended, and they didn't have to pay him for a whole year anyway. And then they released him and had to pay him for that year, and it was all on Edwin Diaz. So they got the best of him in 2022, and they jumped and they signed him to a deal. And is he worth $20 million a year? No, he's not worth $20 million a year. He's just not. He has his moments of greatness, but these 2 losses are enormous for the Mets because we're running out of time here. As Yogi says, getting late early. The Mets are on the outside looking in right now. They're on the outside looking in. And the only positive is if they win today and then they sweep the White Sox, they're gaining on either the Phillies or the Braves. The Phillies have hit the tailspin too. Right. There's one team in baseball that's running away with the division. One. That's the Milwaukee Brewers. Everybody else is a nail-biter.
But you go back to that deal, Michael. I mean, we didn't know a lot about Diaz. He was only 24 years old, but he did lead the league in saves with 57 the year before he
had that great year with the Mariners, and then he had one great year with the Mets. But the years before, he was not great. And now last year, he couldn't help getting hurt, so he missed the entire year. He has not been that same dominant pitcher that he was when they were playing Narcos and they were playing, the Timmy Trumpet. None of that exists anymore. His body language even looks bad. So when Yankee fans want to really feel down in the dumps that they don't like their closer, look at every other closer.
Yeah. No, that's a tough one.
There's no Marianos out there.
That's a tough loss. So we'll see. If you win today, you still took 2 out of 3 against a really good Diamondbacks team.
And if you lose today, you won 3 and 4.
No, that's bad. It's bad because you split the 4 games against San Diego. If you take 2 out of 3 from Arizona, with the White Sox looming, that could turn out to be a very good road trip. And a way to close out what was a very, very difficult August in which baseball didn't do them any favors, having to take 2 West Coast trips, and then also the makeup game against the Cardinals on the first West Coast trip in August. So it's not like it gets any easier either, Michael, once you get to September. Because you're going to have, home against the Red Sox, and there'll be meaningful games for them. All right, the Reds and the Blue Jays, but then you got the Phillies, and 6 times in that span. You've got Milwaukee to close out the season. Maybe Milwaukee won't care about those games. They'll already wrapped up the division. But a lot easier in September than it was in August. But this Brave team doesn't lose, Michael. Despite all the injuries, they continue to find ways to win games. But hopefully Philadelphia gets off the mat here. The Braves lose a series. Mets continue to win, and they can gain some games here because I think this weekend is where you got a chance to make up some games.
You want to be a little more concerned about Diaz? All right. 2020, 21, 22, 150 games. He allowed 8 home runs in 150 games. He's pitched in 39 games this year. He's allowed 7 home runs.
Yeah.
Not the same pitcher. Sorry, he's not.
No.
And you still got him for 3 more years at big money.
No, and in 22, Michael, he walked 18 batters in 62 innings, and so far he's walked 15 in 37 2/3. So he's on pace to walk way more guys than he's ever walked in his career.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. Now, let's move to the Yankees. Also not good.
Here we go. No.
You can't go into D.C. and lose 2 out of 3. You can't just not get any hits with runners in scoring position. And once again, 2 games. Yesterday, Mackenzie Gore. The day before, Patrick Corbin. Left-handers shut them down. Shut them down. I know what Aaron Boone said. Well, there's a lot of traffic. Okay, there's a lot of traffic, but you're not scoring. You're not getting the big hit. Left-handers are stopping you. Now, there is nobody, although I think he does not believe it, Don and Peter, there's nobody on the New York airwaves that defends Aaron Boone more than I do.
That is true.
But yesterday, head-scratchingly unacceptable. The previous game, in the exact situation, with the same relief pitcher on the mound, in the same inning, with the same guy coming up. You figured 2 days ago, well, he's got to pinch hit for LeMahieu, right? He's got to. Didn't. LeMahieu flew out to right field. And then after the game, he said, well, Finnegan has incredible reverse splits. He's much tougher on lefties than he is on righties. Okay. That's the hill you want to die on? Good. Now, that's also not factoring in that DJ doesn't seem like he can hit anymore. But you know what? You accept that. He's got the stats at his ready. And he said, and it's true, that Finnegan gets out lefties better than he gets out righties. Cool. Yesterday, same situation, same pitcher, same batter coming up, same inning. And he calls back LeMahieu and sends up Oswaldo Cabrera. What changed? In one night, you came to the realization that DJ can't hit anymore? In one night. Nothing else changed.
Other than just learning from it, I guess. Right?
Really, he Don, he hasn't learned from the previous 3 months that DJ's not the same player that he used to be, and so that now you send up Cabrera, who hit a blistering line drive to center field that was caught, but it doesn't make sense. The guy on the mound still is death on reverse splits. That's his words, not mine. And then you send up Cabrera yesterday, but you didn't send him up the day before. I know he's in an uncomfortable situation. He has DJ LeMahieu on his roster. I mean, he's got to use him, right? But it doesn't mean you have to hit him in the 9th inning of a game that you really should be winning. You can't go into D.C. and you cannot lose 2 games to the Nationals. Well, you can't do it.
And, Michael, you know what I hate about it? And I said this a little bit earlier in the year. I asked you this question. And do great teams that go on to do great things play down to their competition?
They usually don't, but sometimes it happens.
But generally speaking, what you're looking for out of a team that does special things is they take care of business against the bad teams and they play 500 ball with the good teams. This is a team that generally plays good ball against the good teams, but plays down to the bad teams.
Well, it bodes well for the playoffs, I guess, right? And they lucked out that the Orioles lost in LA to the Dodgers, so they're still a game up.
It's a worrisome trait, though. I don't know if it shows a lack of focus.
That's exactly it.
I mean, not taking teams seriously. But I mean, how do you play badly against Patrick Corbin, Don?
But here's the thing. You want to say that you're not focused against a bad baseball team, but you know the team that's right up your rear end for the division is in Los Angeles taking on the Dodgers. You don't want to gain ground on them? You don't want to add to your lead in the division?
I think it's just a weak excuse. I mean, every game should be so locked in. They've got to win every single game. You can't relax against it. They're not good enough to relax. As I said, as the Orioles are, as the Dodgers are, they're all flawed teams. They can't just throw their gloves out there and win.
No, because then there is an issue with you if you can lose focus just based on who your opponent is. If you go out there and play your game, you should be able to take 2 out of 3 against the Washington Nationals. You should be able to sweep the White Sox. You shouldn't lose 2 out of 3 to the Detroit Tigers if you just take care of business. Like football, that's a motivation sport, where maybe your head's in the clouds for a moment or so, but just go out there and just execute. That's all you're asking to be able to win these games, not kicking the ball all over the place, not being able to get a hit with runners in scoring position. And what this does, I will spin it the other way as far as, well, it should bode well for the postseason because you're going to be taking on playoff teams and not lousy teams. But I could spin it the other way, just a constant reminder, if you're not getting home runs from Soto and Judge, you're not scoring runs. And are the home runs going to be there, Michael, against really good pitching? Listen, Judge and Soto are special guys, but it's still harder to hit good pitching than lousy pitching. So all I know is that this is a team that historically has struggled in the postseason to be able to get home runs and to be able to score runs consistently. That's what's killed them in the postseason. And you see, if Judge and Soto are not hitting home runs, they're not scoring a lot. So that's usually how difficult it is to score in the postseason. So that's what would worry me, is that what are you getting outside of Soto and Judge?
And also, you saw 2 walks last night for Judge. Aren't those going to keep coming?
Yeah, they are going to keep coming. Now, the only thing that should stop them is that the teams that they're playing are bad teams. I mean, they have one of the easiest schedules. Now, because they don't play well against bad teams, that's not great. But you'd think that those other managers want to see if their pitchers could get this guy out. I watched the entire game yesterday, and I think it was just a case of, you know what, they couldn't throw strikes. They weren't pitching around him. I think they were afraid of maybe having him get a hit, but I don't think they're going to pitch around him because they're not playing for anything. Now, whether they pitch around him or not, do you know that the Yankees in that series were 1 for 26 with runners in scoring position?
I mean, it's incredible.
The third worst average with runners in scoring position in a series over the last 50 years with a minimum of 20 at-bats. Now, this month, the month of August, they're 40 for 200. That's 200 with runners in scoring position, the 5th worst mark in the majors, and on pace to be their worst mark in a calendar month since June of 2021. So they can't hit lefties, and they can't beat teams under 500. Not great, Bob.
No. And you throw in the lefty situation, which certainly bit them against Corbin, and you look at the games they lost, Corbin and Gore. Look at the earned run average of those guys. Both under 500 pitchers. What did Corbin win his 4th game of the year? He was 3-12 going into that game. I think he statistically was the worst left-hander in baseball. And shut you down.
Now, one other thing. You mentioned focus earlier. And I'll repeat, I'm a big Rodon fan. Unlike most Yankee fans, the guy's won 14 games. But he can't. I'm sorry. I don't know how many watched the game yesterday on Prime. You can't unravel. You just can't unravel like that because the pitch comm doesn't work. There's been 150 years of baseball before the pitch comm. I mean, figure it out, dude. Don't melt down like that. I mean, he's yelling at the umpire. What if he got thrown out there? You can't do it. He gave up 4 runs in the first 2 innings, and boom, they're done. The way they're hitting, they're done. Also, with a lack of concentration. Do you know the Nationals stole 5 bases in 2 innings against Wells? Now, how much of it was Wells? How much of it was Rodon not concentrating? You can't sit there and lose it because the pitch comm's not working. And then you're arguing. You clearly balked. The rule is step off if you have a problem with the pitch com. Step off the rubber and tell the umpire I have a problem. Instead, he stayed on the rubber and did it, and then he's arguing why it was called a balk. It was clearly a balk.
Yeah, and you worry about the unraveling, Michael. This is a guy that has exactly 2 innings of postseason experience. So what's going to happen in a big spot in the playoffs? 50,000 people at Yankee Stadium. Wouldn't you be interested to know how that's going to go?
I would be, and I'd be interested to see what start he's going to get, because right now you would assume Cole's going to get a start.
Of course.
Heal's going to come back. He'll get a start.
Cortez has been good.
Clark Schmidt's going to come back, and he was an all-star before he got hurt. Is he going to get a start? Does Rodon come out of the bullpen? I don't know. Rodon has 14 wins, so you just don't discard him.
Right.
But you don't like the fact that he has that meltability out there. You can't do that. He's a veteran. He can't be melting down because a piece of equipment doesn't work. That was a scary thing to watch yesterday. You're sitting there watching it on TV and go, calm down, dude. I know it's frustrating, but you got to calm down. So you got a manager who made a different decision separated by 1 day in the same situation, completely different. So the excuse that he gave the day before obviously didn't apply to yesterday. And then you got a pitcher who makes $26 million a year melting down because his pitch comm doesn't work.
But here's why I'm okay with the DJ decision, if that's the way it's going to be moving forward.
Well, it is going to be because Rizzo will be back tomorrow.
Because there's a line of demarcation where it's like, okay, now we finally had enough. Maybe it took too long to get to that point. But if it does turn around, the next opportunity, he doesn't pinch it for him. Think about what's going on here. But as you said, Rizzo's coming back, so that may never present itself again. But maybe there was that line of, okay, now I'm officially done. I gave him the opportunity the day before. Now it's over.
Yeah, you know what
Rizzo's
bothers me, though?
Back.
Listen, I'm some hack, okay? He's never played a game of important baseball in my life. I could see it. And the fact that we said yesterday, there's not a single metric that they could produce that would tell you that DJ LeMahieu should be playing. Not a single one. He should have known that before that 9th inning 2 days ago. They had a chance to tie the game against a reliever who's dreadful. Look at his ERA. Look at Finnegan's ERA. He's got great stuff, but he has not pitched well this year. Couldn't do it. 2 straight days. Not good.